how did I get to the point where I could be away from the office and kind of out of communication for that long? That starts with a team that you trust. That is key, in my opinion. You have to have people that you trust that are showing up, they're doing the work, they care about your clients as much as you care about your clients. They are not saying, oh, well, she's never here. When somebody calls, they say, well, that's not available, but I can help you. That's the kind of stuff that makes it easy to be gone. Knowing that I have a trusted team that is going to do what they can to get the job done. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Accounting with Confidence. I'm Beth Whitworth, your host, and I am here today with another episode that is a little off the cuff, but it is definitely something that I just wanted to share. So in the past, I've done an episode or two about things that I have learned, starting with probably episode number 1, which was all the lessons I learned throughout my career as far as big mindset shifting things that related to the industry. And then I've done the occasional what I learned last month, which had some highlights of something that I didn't know in Excel, which is kind of normal. But today, I'm going to talk about some things that I learned last quarter. So last quarter was third quarter of 2025. So that was July, August, and September of 2025. And I thought back to, wow, that quarter seems like it started a long time ago. And I say that because what it started off with was absolutely a giant tax bill. So the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed in very, very early July. And with the passage of that act, it changed essentially where accountants and tax planners and tax preparers and taxpayers, it kind of changed the what you were thinking about. You know, what things were no longer expiring, what things got added, what type of planning do you need to do? What does this mean for us in the future? It was a big question generating event. And I did a couple of episodes on that. I think, I can't remember which episode numbers they are, but I can have Becky link to those in the show notes, that were the Big Beautiful Bill for individuals, the Big Beautiful Bill for businesses. And at that point, it was just really pulling the highlights of that act and what it really is, how it's going to impact people. Now, I haven't gotten back to doing an episode that is more specific as more information is being released, which they're still essentially developing the rules and the instructions and all of the guidance that is needed. But what I did learn, just, a quick rundown, the 100% special depreciation is back, effective January 19th. So any assets purchased January 19th or later for a business can be 100% depreciated. The qualified business income deduction is no longer set to expire. We were talking about only having that through 2025, and now it is extended. There's overtime and tips. There are some deductions relating to those that are going to impact how W-2s may be issued. And so we are still waiting for guidance on what that's going to look like and what the reporting requirements for that would be. There's extra deduction for individuals who are 65 or over, depending on income. It has some income limitations. The SALT tax, which is the state and local tax, it had been capped at $10,000, has been bumped up to $40,000 for starting in 2026. I believe, unless you have income over $500,000 for married filing joint. There's a new above the line charitable deduction, which means that you don't have to itemize in order to take, if you're single, up to $1,000 of charitable donations. If you're married filing jointly, it's $2,000. So you don't have to be able to itemize for that. And talking about itemized, the standard deduction that had been increased with the tax, the job tax, whatever, the big tax bill from 2017 that expanded the standard deduction, that is staying in place. That's not going away. And the 2025 tax brackets are staying the same as 2024. Now, that means things are probably going to go up in the future. So this was kind of a stopgap for this year, which coincides with having kind of a high inflation year with costs going up across the board. So that's probably somewhat helpful, but you cannot rely on those to stay the same. The taxes are going to have to go up. But what did I learn from this, other than all of those facts and having to do that research, is that you need to always be learning and you need to always be ready for changes. So we didn't have a big tax bill that we had to address since the legislation during the pandemic. And that was some massive changes that was really working towards keeping small businesses in business during a time when you were being regulated not to work. And so those were different types of legislative bills that involved having to research and learn and interpret very quickly. So this we have a little bit more time on. So it's not we're going to put this in place and you need to be working on this, like immediately. Most of this, some is going to take effect in 2025, some of it's retroactive, but most of it is going to be moving forward, which gives us plenty of time. So to prepare for those changes, to get into the mode of needing to learn and absorb tax rules again. And I'm happy to say that after all of these years, I can still understand and learn tax laws. So preparing tax returns is not my favorite thing in the world anymore. It used to be something that I really wanted to do and dig into, and I have moved into some more creative types of avenues that I like better, but I still enjoy learning the new stuff and how it's going to impact people. So it's very important to me as I'm presenting and teaching people and or just discussing these new tax laws. For me, it is to stay neutral. It is what it is. They passed it and we need to work on the compliance of it, whether we agree with it or don't agree with it. As a steward of kind of generating those tax returns for people, we are compliance officers. We're making sure we're following the rules that are put in front of us. And so I don't really state opinions necessarily on what I feel about the politics behind any of that. But I will say that, yeah, at some point the tax rates are going to have to go up. When, I don't know, but they will. So, the other thing I learned is we have to be proactive. We need to get the information out. And so I believe I probably got those out by early August when I was doing the podcast episodes on the act. And it was, quick that for the fact that the legislation had just been passed. It was, 800 or 900 pages worth of legislation. Guidance hadn't been out yet and is now starting to trickle out here in early October. And we're hoping that, we get a whole lot more guidance before the end of the year. So will we? I don't know. We already know that we will probably have a late start to the filing season, meaning typically we are able to start filing returns electronically in late January. I'm guessing it is going to be closer to mid-February before they have that ready, because there's so many changes that every single, so the guidance has to be there, and the instructions have to be there, the form changes have to be there, and it has to go through all the checkpoints for every software that is used to prepare tax returns, from the IRS's site down to all of the various vendors that we use for preparing it in the industry. So it's a huge endeavor when there's a big tax law change, and that does tend to make it start later. Now, What they're not going to change is the due dates of the returns, I'm sure. So March 15th for businesses, April 15th for individuals and C corporations. So that's a big one. So I learned about that. I'm sharing that with you now so that you know sometime this quarter, if you haven't yet, you need to check in with your tax preparer or, check in on doing your research to figure out how any of these new changes may impact you and get ahead of it before filing season so that you know what to be looking for. You know all of the ins and outs of what is coming, and stay tuned to be learning from the new guidance that comes out. So that's the first thing I learned last quarter. And I started with that one because that happened so early in the quarter and it feels like so long ago. And it really wasn't. It was 3 months ago. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about that I learned this quarter is that delegating is a skill that can be developed. So as you know, I have a firm. I have 6 to 8 people at any given time that I am working with on my team. And I know that when I first started in business, my go-to method of delegating was to drop and run. And what I mean by that is I'm like, hey, could you work on this for me? Let me know if you have any questions. Boom, I'm out. And that wasn't necessarily the most efficient or effective way to delegate. And what that developed into was things like, well, people aren't getting the information back to me accurately the way I want it. I didn't really question myself as far as, well, did you give them the parameters? I just decided, oh, I can just do that myself. And so I've been called out as kind of being a task hoarder, where I keep my tasks because it's easier for me to do them than delegate them. And as you grow in a business, in a firm, or trying to increase your own capacity, if you don't delegate and delegate well, you really can't grow because you are not getting rid of things on your plate that are they're not moving the needle, or they're not filling your cup, or they're things that you like to hide behind instead of doing the hard stuff. So I'm telling you that I can be taught. So when I was at Scaling New Heights this past summer, there was essentially a course, a session that was on effective delegating. And I did pick up some skills there as far as, needing to make sure when you delegate that you are delegating the whole thing and what the outcome looks like. That was the biggest thing I think I took from that class is, what does the outcome look like? What do you want? What point do you want that task to get to before it's back to you or before it's considered complete? So those types of things are things that I have to think about and work on routinely, because I have figured out that really this delegating it's a mindset. It's a control issue. And for me, it's really hard to ask for help, and it's hard to determine what kind of help I need. So I am ADHD probably to the extreme. And it's gotten worse, I would say, since my routine is not as structured since my daughter left for college and then has since moved out on her own, where, our household is just my husband and I and our dog, James. He's laying over there, and that's it. And so I have a whole lot of opportunity to set my own schedule, to do what I want to do when I want to do it. There's nothing that is telling me I have to stop because I have to be here by a certain time. I have to do this by a certain time. And so it's all up to me to put those structures and kind of guardrails on my day. And I'm not very good at it. And so then I get overwhelmed and then I don't know what help I do need. So I kind of shut down and I just I don't delegate anything. So what I have decided is that I really need to be a proponent of not being behind. And what I mean by that, you've heard me say before that I, just hate it when, especially accounting professionals, but really any business person, wears the number of hours they work like a badge of honor. So one of those things is, oh my gosh, I worked 60 hours this week, and somebody else will say, oh, but I had 75. Okay, that's, for me, I think that is not healthy. But now I look at it and go, okay, well, am I doing the same thing with just constantly being behind on my tasks? And I've determined that being behind should not be a permanent state of affairs. So there's my new my new tagline here. Being behind should not be a permanent state. And so in order to get out of this feeling like I'm permanently behind, I have to develop that delegation skill to the point of it becoming a habit. And I will admit, I am not there yet. I am so not there yet. But I am starting to recognize, and I will give you an example just from yesterday. I know that it's the beginning. It's kind of already a couple weeks into the beginning of the month. So it's the middle of the month, and bank statements always come out at the beginning of the month. And one of the things that, I can go down a rabbit hole of is just going in and downloading all the bank statements we need for the various businesses that we run personally. So my husband's business, my business, there's a couple of other kind of, multiple accounts for each business. And so I started to go do that. And I literally said to myself, I might have said it out loud, stop. This is something someone else can do for you. Put it on the list to delegate it. And I stopped. Because there was no reason that yesterday when I was working through, some big tax returns, trying to get things finished for the last tax deadline of the year, that I should be downloading bank statements. And so in getting kind of on board with this delegation process, it really pushed me to hire an executive assistant / personal assistant. And she's only been on board a couple weeks and I was out of town for some of it, but that she's the one that I can say, she can go download those things. She can go take care of these things for me. And I need to stop getting lost in I don't want to call it minutia, but it's more of the administrative, the clerical, the things that are keeping me from getting things off of my task list. So while those are on my task list, they can go to somebody else's. Or what's also happening is some of these things aren't on any task list. And so they're just in my head. So if I delegate them, they're out of my head, they're on somebody else's list. They're no longer something that is taking up brain power for me. So in hiring Kirsten, I'm able to say, okay, I know that the state of chaos that I sometimes feel like I'm in, not all the time, but sometimes, is on the personal side, and that impacts the business side, and vice versa. The chaos on the business side can impact the chaos that is created on the personal side. So having someone who is just responsible for me and keeping me between those rails is great. But what I know I have to do is make sure that I am delegating appropriately and completely and giving the outcomes I want, the timeline I want, the decision-making level, all of those things. So I did learn this quarter that I needed help and that I can learn to delegate, and that it needs to become a mindset. So one of the things I learned in Woodard, and they use it as one of their main phrases that they help business owners with, is only do what only you can do. So if you look at your world and you say, okay, there's someone else on my team that could do this, then that is not something that has to stay on your plate. So what has to stay on my plate is this. There's nobody else on my team who's going to record a podcast. What has to stay on my list is the coaching. I work with clients on entity selection if they want to purchase another business. I work with clients on getting their businesses ready to be sold or acquired or set up for succession planning. I work with clients on cash flow and coaching them to reach their own goals. Can somebody else on my team do that? Not yet. I mean, Sarah can, but Sarah does so much of our process work and our onboarding and getting all of our clients into a really good state of getting their financials on a timely basis and understanding and learning. And she does all of that. I love the coaching part. So when we look at only do what only you can do, I need to free up my task list of all of those things that someone else could do. And that's what my EA is going to help me with. That's what our office administrator is going to help me with. That's what Sarah's going to help me with. And we will work on the delegating, and we will work on kind of not wearing that task list length as a badge of honor, because I should not be in this permanent state of being behind and not being able to get things done, and then not being able to reach, the goals that I want to reach. So that was the number 2 thing that I learned this past quarter. Now, the last thing is something that I knew I was working towards and had been seeing in my results. And that is to build a business that works without me. And what I figured out this past quarter, what I learned is that is amazing. I was away from home 35 days out of the 91 total days there were in last quarter. Now, some of those were weekends, but not all of them, because 35 days, that's more than a month that I was away from home in July, August, and September. And that was a combination of, racing events. I had a girls' trip, we had nationals, and then that doesn't count. And just a few days ago, I was out of town again. That was already in the fourth quarter. And while it's amazing, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. You know how it is when it's like people have radar for when you're going to be gone, and that's when they have something they think is urgent or an emergency. And it used to be when we maintained a whole bunch of servers in our office that every time we left town was when there would be some sort of technological IT glitch. And we would be spending time trying to navigate getting a server up and running again while we're out of town. So everything's in the cloud now. We're not server based. So that's not it. But when I say that it's not always sunshine and rainbows, it's because sometimes it's really hard for clients to understand or your team to understand that when you're taking time off, you're taking time off. And I will work from the road a lot of times, especially on long trips where we are driving across the country, on long, and our trips average anywhere from, I would say, 5 to 12 hours, depending on how far away we're going. But I'll work from the truck. I've got my laptop and my extra monitor that attaches and all those good things. And I can work from my mobile apps very easily. And so I will sometimes get a lot of work done in the truck. But it's still one of those things where it's different. It's not, my business doesn't need me to be at my desk or in my office or answering the phone or communicating with everyone every minute of the day because I'm not that kind of manager. And the work keeps going. I've automated all the billing. So when I'm gone, the bills are still getting out. I'm about to delegate our payroll so that I'm not the one processing, pulling the hours and putting them into the payroll system. And it's really works out that by being able to be away from work and on the road that much, it really works out to I end up having a part-time job. And I have worked really hard on not having to then cram when I get back, where I am having to put in a whole bunch of extra hours, or before I leave, I've got to, yes, there are things I need to get done, but it's not something where I have to worry about that I can't leave until these things get done, because I can do the work from anywhere, really. And so that was eye-opening for me when I saw that I was away from home for that many days, 35 days, 35. And it's great. I mean, I love being able to be flexible like that. Now, does it add to back to number 2, where I have trouble setting my own schedule that keeps me on track? Yes. Sometimes it does, because it's not routine. And for me, routine is probably, I'm just like my dog. You have a good routine, your dog's probably pretty good. When I don't have a routine, I'm not as productive. And so I'm working on that. But to help you understand how I got to that point, how did I get to the point where I could be away from the office and kind of out of communication for that long? That starts with a team that you trust. Now, that is key, in my opinion. You have to have people that you trust that are showing up, they're doing the work, they care about your clients as much as you care about your clients. They are not saying, oh, well, she's never here. They're helping. When somebody calls, they say, well, Beth's not available, but I can help you. That's the kind of stuff that makes it easy to be gone, knowing that I have a trusted team that is going to do what they can to get the job done. Now, the other piece of that is getting to those standardized processes and tech. So, like I said, billing is on automatic at this point. I do not send out any invoices. I do not collect any checks. So that piece alone in the standardized processes has has taken a huge chunk of time away, where I don't have to be worried about the money coming in. It's automated. Everybody's on ACH or credit card, and it just happens all month long, and it works without me. The other piece to that, to getting to the point of being able to be away and essentially working yourself into a part-time job, is in setting client expectations. Setting client expectations of your availability, of when you'll be able to get back to them. I will do, when I know I'm traveling and my schedule is tight at the front of the week before I'm leaving, I will schedule a call and have it in the truck on our drive. I will have some flexibility during that time, where when I'm here, when I'm actually at my office, I have some days of the week where you can't book an appointment with me. But when I know I'm traveling, I open up some flexibility. So that is something that if you can communicate to your clients of, the easiest way to get a hold of you, who their designated team member is when you're not available, what is the expectation of how soon you will get back to them via email, all of those things, and being a little proactive on when a client is looking for you. Hey, let's get a call on the books. Let's schedule a time. When's a good time? Can I call you at Wednesday at 9:00? Or whatever, so that it's pre-scheduled. You explain that, you like to have calls scheduled so that you can be prepared and that you can give your undivided attention to that client. And if you set those expectations, it does make a lot of sense. Now, if you never do, and your clients feel like they can never get a hold of you, or there's not somebody backing you up, you feel like you never get a vacation, that you never get that time off, that you have to answer the phone when you're on the road. And that is something that's why I've always had a team. I don't want to be the only one doing this. I want some people to help me, one, on the areas that I'm not strong in, and two, so that the clients are served even if I'm away. Now, as a firm, one of our biggest values is learning. So that is the other how of how I've gotten to this point, is that, we value learning so that everybody on the team is up to date on the rules, the tax laws, the software certifications, when deadlines are, so that anybody on the team can support the client, because we have provided the education and support for them to be able to do that. Now, the last piece I should say is back to number 2. Now, delegating, not just the task. You have to delegate responsibility. You have to delegate decision-making authority. You have to be able to grant control of something to someone else and trust that they will get it done. And I am working on that. And in a lot of ways, I'm absolutely hands-off. I have no say, no direction, no anything on a lot of the client work that is leaving. It is highly supervised. It is standardized. It is being reviewed, all of those things. And it's because I've delegated the responsibility and the authority. And by doing that, I'm able to step away. So that is definitely a big thing that I learned this year when I went back to look at how many days I've been gone. It will be interesting when I go back and look for the year, how many days I've been gone, because I know second quarter I had a whole lot of trips, and I even took a trip during first quarter. So there's going to be a lot of days. I've got one more trip scheduled in November of this year. So got one more out of town. But overall, I would say if I was going to give last quarter a score, a grade, a letter grade, I would give it a B. I definitely have room to improve on my delegation and clear communication of outcomes. And I need to improve on looking at that task list and giving the question, is this something only you can do? If not, it needs to go, and it needs to get moved on to somebody else's task list. So I loved being able to travel, and I really enjoy traveling with my husband and spending time. We do racing, and we have visited friends, and we do a lot of stuff together, and being able to, work while he's driving, and he's always a good sounding board at those times. He's kind of my management committee. He doesn't know it, but he helps me stay between the rails just like everybody else. So now this coming quarter is fourth quarter. So this is the fourth quarter. This is planning and budgeting season. So if you haven't started planning and budgeting, now is the time to start it. And what you need to do is kind of gather up what has happened so far this year, put a projection on where you think you're going to finish this year, and start planning for next year. What are your goals? Is it a revenue goal? Is it a profit goal? Is it a number of clients goal? What is your goal? Start working on it. What things could you do that will move your needle? Do you need a marketing plan? Do you need to hire someone to be in management? Do you need, what do you need? So this is the time to start thinking about that and to start figuring out what it is you want to get accomplished next year. So I would say start focusing on that. I'm guessing I will have some more planning and budgeting type episodes. I know I'm getting ready to go to Woodward Summit in November, and so I am working on my strategic plans, and I will be interested to pull some of those techniques that we are using to prepare for that and share those with you, because I think that it is an interesting exercise. And it is important if you have goals, which I think if you're in business, you should have goals, then it's important to plan for them. Okay, so I think that's all I really have. I mean, we talked about what I learned. I learned about one big, beautiful bill, and I learned about delegating and how it is a skill that I need to work on developing. And I learned that I can be away from the business and it survives without me. And those three things are important. They're important. They're all important in different ways, but overall, I believe it is something that is important to just look back and reflect on what you do for the last 3 months. What stood out to you as things that are lessons that you might have learned. Okay, I have 2 more asks for you today. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Every year, some of you may know, some of you may not, but I don't ride anymore, but I do a virtual ride for Pedal the Cause, which is an organization here in St. Louis that raises money for cancer research. And the research stays within our community. And as a cancer survivor and someone who has had many, many family members and friends be impacted by this, research is something that is truly important to me. So 13 years running, we have been raising money, and it's mostly been a team of my husband and I. So on September 21st, Dave rode 100 miles for Pedal the Cause. He rode it during the event. So he was with a group that did 100 miles in the St. Louis area. I was on a girls' trip, so I missed it. But it's one of those things that we believe in wholeheartedly, and we raise money for it every year. And we have until October 31st to raise funds for this year. And I would love it if anybody would be willing to donate to Pedal the Cause. Like I said, it is 100% of the money goes to research. Everything else, any of the donation dollars are not used to fund the jerseys, the event, the food, anything. All of the money raised goes straight to research and impacts research on childhood cancers, on breast cancer, on all the cancers here at Siteman in St. Louis, which is a world-renowned site that helps with cancer treatment and cancer research. So I would ask that, if you can give anything before October 31st, there will be a link in the show notes to my link, which is the Cancer Curing Car, and I would appreciate it. And then the second thing I ask is that if you haven't already, subscribe or like or follow anywhere that you are listening to this. So if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube, please like or subscribe. I would love to increase the number of followers. A lot of times that gives me access to more visibility so that more people can hear what I have to say. And then finally, my last thing, I'm wearing my, can you see it? Mental Health is Health shirt. So for mental health awareness, so I would love it if more people realize that mental health, it is health. It's not a stigma to talk about it. It's not a stigma to be treated. It's health. You have to treat your mental health just as much as you have to treat your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, all of those things. And so I'm wearing my mental health is health because I want everyone to recognize the fact that it should be something that is normalized. And with a daughter who is working in the industry of mental health as a nurse, I am just passionate about people removing that stigma and recognizing that everybody has mental health that they need to be aware of. And that's just part of it's part of everybody's world, and it should be something that is normalized. So, okay, that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed learning the few things that I learned last quarter. And if you have any suggestions for additional topics, please click the link below that says send Beth a text and give me an idea for any topic that you would be interested in. That is all I have for now. talk to you next week.